Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us DJ Logory, founder of Be That Guy, a coaching program equipping young men with confidence, discipline, and purpose through habits and accountability. So we'll explore with DJ what's really going on inside young men's minds today, the struggles parents don't see, the confidence gap, and the path forward. Welcome to the show, DJ.
Thank you so much for having me, Ajay. I'm very excited to dive into this topic of young men. It's something that I'm very passionate about, so I really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, DJ. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, a lot of young people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about what you every day talk about, be that guy. So we'll try and understand this, what you are doing about this, and also about the struggles of young men. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Perfect. So I'm originally from Rochester, New York, and I grew up there for about 27 years. And recently, about 2 years ago, moved to Tampa, Florida. So a little bit change of scenery. But basically, my story is I graduated from college in 2016, 2017 timeframe. And when I graduated college, I had this awesome job that I loved. It was in graphic design and marketing, and it was basically everything that I wanted to do. It's everything that I went to college for. And what ended up happening was I unfortunately got fired from that job in a very interesting way. And when that happened, I was not mentally equipped to handle that type of wave in my life. And I started really comparing a lot of my failures to everybody else's successes. I saw a lot of my friends, my teammates, people on social media looking like they were making a lot more progress in their life than I was. And I really started to kind of struggle with my self-confidence and my self-belief. And so for about 6 months, I, on a daily basis, was really struggling kind of with where I was going with my life. I kind of felt like I was sedated. I felt like I was directionless, and I didn't really know how to talk about it without feeling like a total failure. And one day I was at the gym at my college in Rochester, New York, and an old basketball coach of mine named Scott Gibbs saw me and came up to me. And Scott and I had always had a great relationship. He had coached me in maybe 7th, 8th, or 9th grade. And he asked me how I was doing. And I was like, in all honesty, I'm actually doing pretty bad. I'm like, I kind of feel totally lost. Like, I feel like I missed something. I feel like everybody else is doing so much better than me. I just feel like I've lost that confident, disciplined, and excited DJ. And so Scott, being the man that he is, he asked me if I wanted to talk about it. And so that night we spoke for probably about 3 hours, and he let me just kind of get it all out. And that ended up being the catalyst to essentially a 3-year mentorship relationship with Scott, where him and I would meet 1 to 3 times a week, and he would mentor me and he would coach me through my own habits and confidence and discipline, essentially a lot of the stuff that we do with the guys today. And as I started to, I think, get more of my confidence back, one of the things that I started to do was I started to do what I like to call controlled friction. And controlled friction is essentially deliberately making your days a little bit harder through tracking healthier habits. And so this is probably what we'll talk a lot about today. I think a lot of the young men today have grown up in a lot of comfort, right? If you think about technology, right? Technology is created to make things more comfortable and more convenient. And that's essentially what a lot of young men have gotten used to. And I don't think that comfort builds self-belief, self-confidence, toughness, discipline, accountability, all these really important traits to life. And so I realized that going through my 20s, if I intentionally created a little bit of this friction, I actually started to change what I thought about myself. And so as I went through my 20s, I started to essentially track a lot of my healthy habits, such as exercise, reading, sleep, nutrition. I was starting to track like protein and things like that. And as I did that throughout my 20s, I drastically changed what I thought about myself and kind of got that confidence and that discipline back. And as I started to do more of this, I think people just started to see that I was changing. And I had moms actually start to reach out to me and say, hey, my son is 17, 18 years old, kind of struggling with some direction in his life. He doesn't seem too motivated to figure a lot of things out. Can you work with him? And I was always very upfront with them about, hey, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a guy who was probably very similar to where your son was at. And here are the couple things that I did that I really believed in. And I said, I can walk your son through those things. And they were all okay with that. And so throughout my 20s, I started working with these young men on like a one-on-one basis. And as I went through, I said, hey, let's just build a whole community and what we call a Be That Guy Club now. And I said, let's just build a whole club of guys who believe in this thing of tracking habits, this controlled friction idea, so that we can all collectively build our self-belief and our self-image so that we can operate better in the world today and be the leaders that we're called to be. And so that's essentially how we ended up actually building Be That Guy and kind of coming to this, this day today.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Mhm.
DJ. So, who is this Be That Guy? Is it the guy who needs help, or is it the guy who is helping?
So I think it's a great question, right? Maybe it's a little bit of both, right? I think it's being that guy who decides to take your life more seriously. I think there's a lot of young men today, as I was mentioning, who have gotten used to complacency and gotten used to comfort. And I believe that there are those 1% of guys who want to be that guy who has healthy habits, right? Who is reading books, who is limiting their social media, who knows how to communicate with people instead of having a screen in front of them. I still believe that there are guys out there, and that's what it means to essentially be that guy, right? Be that guy who wants to be the 1%. And I would like to think that I am also in that group of trying to be that guy, right? A lot of the stuff that we walk guys through and coach them on, I'm doing all of it with them, right? So it's never really like a doctor to patient type of relationship. It's more of like a peer to peer type of experience. So we're all trying to be that guy to some regard.
Absolutely, DJ.
Mhm.
So, to understand it, you say you want young people, to take their life a bit seriously. What is the age of generally such people? Means, isn't that age to take take their lives less seriously, have fun when they can, because responsibilities are not yet have not yet come, and then
Yes.
with that experience, living life a bit later on, they transition into life of responsibility. Why it is worrying some for parents? A lot of children, kids, teens, they do have a life, with the no worries and saying, what is it that makes their children worried about them, and then they come to you?
Yeah. So I think it's a great point, right? When would I recommend a young man starts taking his life more seriously, right? And I think this is where, like when you talk about like discipline or consistency, I always tell the guys, I say, we're not trying to achieve perfection here, right? I think if we're trying to achieve perfection, that's, we have this saying, the pursuit of perfection is noble, yet the expectation of perfection is insane. And so when it comes to taking your life more seriously, it doesn't mean, hey, I'm never going to use a phone again. I'm never going to play video games again. I'm never going to eat Cheetos and watch Netflix again. I'm just going to literally do everything to the most perfect of my ability. No, that's not necessarily what we're trying to get at here. I believe that when it comes to progress and when it comes to confidence and discipline, it's about an integration. So instead of playing 8 hours of video games a day, what would your life look like if you played 2? Like, what would you do with that other time? And how can we use that time for something a little bit more progress driven? And I think a lot of the struggles that guys have today is they actually don't know what to do with their time if technology is taken away from them. Right. And so if the video games or the phone and the social media was taken away, what would they do? Right. They would actually have to like get on a landline or get on another phone and call a friend and maybe go outside or go do something. And that's, I think, where a lot of just the convenience of video games or social media are just there because they just don't necessarily know what else to do with their time. And so I think when it comes to when it comes to taking your life a little bit more seriously, understanding where am I spending my time? And you can have some of that time be leisure activities. I like Netflix just as much as the other guy, but I don't watch 10 hours of it. I might watch an hour of it, maybe once a week. Right. And so it's an integration of it. And so now the majority of my time goes towards more healthier things, right? Whether that's diet, whether that's working out with some other young men, exercise, things like that. Right. So I think it kind of phases out towards maybe that junior, senior type of age range. So kind of like when the 17, 18-year-olds, kind of like when they get their license, right? Kind of, it's like a little, almost like a step into independence, right? Thinking a little bit more about how am I spending my days and are the things that I'm doing progressing me, right? Are they pushing me more towards independence and being of service to the world?
Absolutely, DJ.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Let's understand it a bit from, couple of other points of view. Is that, you talked about technology. Phone, if technology is taken away from them, then a lot of people do not know, youngsters do not know what to do with that extra time. And so we should let's not assume technology is one of the big reasons that they are facing difficulty. A lot of other people are facing, but young generation, yes, they have grown up with a phone in their hand most of the time. Now, in terms of, suddenly their parents come to you. They had all the time in the world when they handed over the phone to them. They could not control them. Then, they could not limit the time. Some parents are able to, some parents are not able to. And then the problem became a problem actually to such an extent that they are worrying. Then they need help from a person like you. Fine, nothing wrong with that. Again, you talked about that you create friction, some sort of, resilience in their comfortable lives so that they can understand it better,
Mhm.
so that they can be prepared for the real world. Why is it that suddenly the parents will are confident that they will listen to you, the kids will listen to you, when they did not listen to them all throughout their lives till now? Help us under how is your interaction when they are brought in front? Do they know that there is some issue, or is it that they are just happy that they are meeting you? You are also a young person, and they
Mhm.
are happy to meet you. Help us understand from that mindset. Do they know that their parents are worried about them? Because that is also the time when they have to go out into the world and be independent. I guess in the US, after 18, you go and stay
Mhm.
on your own.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is the number one thing that I'm really trying to communicate to the world better is the power of mentorship. And to answer your question, a lot of the time, so moms are typically the parents that we work with. It's about 99% of the time it's moms. And the moms will come to us and typically say, "Hey, my son is struggling with X, Y, and Z, whether it's officially failing to launch, whether it's college, whether it's school, whether it's getting a job, getting out of the house, motivation, all these different things." And the mom will say, I've been talking to him about this for years. And so like let's look at it from the guy's perspective. The guy knows that his mom was there when he was 10. The guy knows that his mom was there when he took his first steps. The guy know that his mom was there when he said his first word, when he went to first grade, when he got on the school bus, when she helped him make his first lunch. And so there's a huge history and emotional connection that the guys have with their mom, just generally because the mom has a son and the son has a mom, right? Just that natural family dynamic. So when the mom says, "Hey, why aren't you exercising or why aren't you figuring out your life?" The son knows that there's actually a reason that the mom wants her son to figure out his life because it's actually a reflection on the mom too. So there's the guys can sense that there's actually like a deeper reason why mom wants her son to figure out his life. Now, obviously, right, the mom wants her son to be happy, to be healthy, to be all of that. Yet a mom also wants it because she wants to be a good mom that raised a strong, healthy young man who is independent and confident and kind of creating his own life and being of service to the world. Now, when I come in, I have zero history with the guy. And now it doesn't even necessarily have to be me. It could be anybody, right? It's just essentially a third party. And this is where like mentorship, I think, is so valuable. And so when I come in, I am a third party objective on his life. So I wasn't there when he was 10. I wasn't there when he took his first step. I wasn't there for any of that. And so when I say, "Why aren't you figuring out your life? Why aren't you exercising?" I don't have a deeper agenda, right? There is no historical connection to him. So it cuts off a lot quicker. And this is what I felt like, as I shared earlier with Scott, my mentor, when I was in my early 20s and he started to ask me some of these questions. He's like, "Why aren't you tracking your workouts? Why aren't you eating healthier?" It kind of didn't matter to him if I did it or not, right? So like it removed the status play for him. And so if my mom or my dad said this to me, it was a completely different experience or dynamic, because there is technically a status reflection on them, right? They are my parents. They want to raise a healthy, strong young man. And so the reason that I think this lands differently is because of that cutoff of the emotional connection. And I'll give you a really simple story about this. When I was maybe 16, 17 years old, I was training. So I played football in college, and I was training at this facility in Rochester, New York. And during one of these training sessions, there was a D1 defensive end. I believe he was from Princeton. Guy was massive. He was like 6'6", like 275 pounds, and just moved like the wind. And I remember training with him. We had a great session. At the end, he said, I drink about 3 to 4 protein shakes a day just to keep up with protein. And I was like, man, that's a great idea. I went home that night and I literally made myself like 3 protein shakes and just drank all these protein shakes. My father comes in, he goes, I've been telling you to do that for like 2 years now, and you just decided to do it. Now, why did I decide to do that? I did it because the Princeton defensive end told me. He was a third-party objective. He didn't care if I did it or didn't do it, right? But I decided just to do it because it wasn't my dad, right? So maybe there was some defiance. Maybe there was some revolt, right? I was a young man once. Yet when my father told me, I didn't listen to him, right? So that's why I think a huge strategy of parents is to actually get their son a mentor, right? Because the parents want their sons to do certain things, right? Practice certain values. And sometimes, majority of the time, those parents' voices just get really close to the guy, and there's a status representation there as well. So if you can get your son a mentor, right? Whether it's maybe one of his male coaches, a male teacher, maybe a male pastor in his community, or what I recommend be that guy, right? Get him a mentor so that the voice has a cutoff and there is no emotional history to it. And that's where it actually lands much differently with them. And so a lot of the times parents will say, I told him to do X, Y, and Z, yet I just think he'll listen to you because you're not me. And I'm like, that's exactly it, right? I will literally get on a call and be like, why aren't you exercising? Why aren't you doing job applications? And then I just let it sit. It's like, it doesn't really matter to me, right? Do what you want to do, right? This is what I would do if I really wanted to figure out my life. And then they typically end up just doing it. And the parents are like, oh my God, he did all the things, right, that we've been telling him to do for years. And I tell him, I said, the content is the same, but the dynamic is different. That's the key, right? Same content, different dynamic. So kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it's a very important answer.
Thank you for that. Indeed. Well
Yeah.
explained, DJ. Now, I'll come to this part also. But before that, the same guy, before you come in, he has grown up and he has also got friends everywhere in whatever little life he has got. In school, outside, around the block. In school, he has got teachers also. He has got, other people also who must be in a way, we can assume they are all well-wishers. Some friends will be not so close, but some will be blunt enough to tell them that you are not doing all the right things. Is it not happening or is it happening? And if it is happening, why is the guy not listening to those guys? Why would he listen to you? Help us understand from that. How can we create a system where the guy listens to them also? Or is it happening only in 50-50 cases?
Yeah, I think a lot of if you think about so let's say there's like a group of like 5 guys, right? They've all grown up together. Maybe they're around the ages of 17 to 18. I think it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. And so if one of the guys says to one of his buddies, hey, like you should do a better job with that, or have you tried this? They've probably been buddies for their whole life. And so it's kind of like, hey, you were with me when I was in 2nd grade. You were with me when I was in 3rd grade. And so it's actually like a similar dynamic to kind of like the mom and the son, where they've always been with them, right? So I think it depends upon the level of respect the guys have for each other. And if the guys are willing to listen to each other and honestly call each other out, right? Because a lot of what we do, like I don't blatantly call guys out. I act curious with the guys, right? Like, do you really think playing 8 hours of video games a day is going to help? And just like, let that sit. Right. And that's something that totally a friend could do. Now it's a question of, does that friend love that guy enough? Right. Is he courageous enough? Because there is a little bit of vulnerability in there, which is a fear, right? Because guys do not want to be vulnerable, right? Because we have egos. And so we always want to feel strong. And so if there is a guy in that group who is tough enough to do that, then I think he will raise that group. Now, the majority of guys that I've met today are not in groups like that, right? Because they all grew up not only close to each other, yet they all grew up within the same, you could say, technological bubble, right? And so I think when it comes to, hey, why would they listen to me? It's because I wasn't their buddy in third grade. I wasn't their buddy in fourth grade. I'm also a 30-year-old guy who has his head on his shoulders and talks about some pretty vulnerable things. So I'm very open with the guys, which is something that's very important to be that guy, is vulnerability. I like to call it personal honesty. We talk about the things that guys typically don't talk about. So I will talk to the guys about the 10 things I struggled with when I was their age. So they immediately know that I'm not trying to do a power play on them. They immediately know that, like, hey, I've been broken in these ways. Here's the ways that I'm insecure. Here's the things that I'm still struggling with. And maybe you are too. And at that point, it really opens up the opportunity for conversation and connection.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely, DJ. Again, well explained. Let's understand this guy's world a bit better, because you talk about, that you try and help these guys improve their confidence, discipline, and life direction.
Mhm.
When you peep into their world, what is it that they generally share about? What about confidence? For those people who lose confidence or need help with confidence, what confidence? At 16, 17,
Mhm.
18, you have your own confidence. And maybe there are a few things, as you grow up, maybe in some things you may have your own questions. What
Mhm.
about life direction? They have hardly seen life at that point in time. Or have they seen whatever they seen and they thought this is what life is all about? What about discipline? Aren't they already enough discipline to go by in that age, where whatever they have got in their school life? Home is always a bit more, much more casual. Help us
Mhm.
understand from what is it that is going on in the world today with young men.
So I would say that the biggest challenge that a lot of these guys are struggling with is a lack of belief in their abilities, in who they are. And I think, I mean, we could sit back and blame technology as much as we want. And I saw a video put out by Gary Vee a couple weeks ago about parenting too, and bringing back like tough parenting. And I completely agree with that, because unfortunately, a lot of the parents that I meet with, the moms, typically they know that they've kind of created or allowed too much comfort and complacency with their son. And now he's taking advantage of it. And so now they're like, how do I like unwind, right, the comfort and the complacency? And so I think back to like when I was raised in a very healthy integration of intensity, discipline, consistency, and leadership with kindness, love, empathy, and curiosity. Right. And so I was very fortunate to where I kind of had really high hard skill and soft skill development, which I can now see has been one of the greatest things that I ever got to experience. And it makes me eternally grateful for my parents, because a lot of like I would say, old school values with new school understanding. And so I think when it comes to confidence within a lot of these young men, I think confidence is built by challenge and by discomfort in actually overcoming this pain. And so unfortunately, if we got a two-prong approach here, right? If parents are allowing the complacency and allowing the comfort, then the son is going to get used to that environment, right? That's essentially going to become the standard. And so then when it comes to a job interview, school applications, building a relationship, building a strong body and a mind, all of those things are not easy. So everything that the son has been used to in an easy environment now is completely different when it comes to all the things that are really important in life. So then that's when they get overwhelmed. Then that's when they retreat. Then that's when they don't want to make the wrong decision and be a failure. So instead, they just don't make a decision at all. And that's why we have guys living at their parents' houses until their mid 20s, because they just haven't made a decision, because they don't want to feel like a failure, because they're so afraid of the possible pain and discomfort. When you talk to some of the world's smartest entrepreneurs and most successful people, they talk about the value of the pain, the value of the risk, the value of the failure, and what you learn. And it's a completely different perspective on it. So I think the first piece about confidence is doing hard things intentionally. And I'm not saying like jumping in an ice bath for an hour. I'm doing like little things right? Like, hey, maybe you wake up like 30 minutes earlier, maybe you decrease your phone usage by 30 minutes. And then the most important part about this, which hits on, I think, all of these, is tracking it, like actually creating a system. So like we have, for anybody who's watching, this is our calendar that we use with all the guys. And so we track all the days that they basically follow through on the thing that they said they were going to do. And so when you do that over 2 months, 4, 6, a year, you have all of this evidence that you followed through on the hard thing. What do you think that might do to your self-image? What do you think that might do to your self-belief? Like, holy cow, I believe I can actually do hard things. One of the things that we test all the guys in beginning of our program and end of their program is their belief in their ability to do something hard. And all of the guys, their stats all go up, right? They believe that they can do harder things now simply because they proved to themselves that they can. All right. So that's the first thing about confidence. Your piece about life direction, the biggest thing that I have with that is a lot of guys just don't know what they want to do. And so because of that, they don't choose anything, kind of like what I was saying earlier. And so they just kind of stay where they're at. And it, like, 6 months goes by, and then a year goes by, and then 2 years goes by. And then their parents are kind of like, dude, we got to pick something and just like let it rip and just kind of figure things out. And so a lot of the times what I'll have guys do, because a lot of guys will come to us, they're like, I just don't know what I want to do. I just don't know, like, do I go to college? Do I go to trade school, right? Do I take a year off? Do I go backpack throughout Europe, right? Everybody's trying to figure out, like, what is their thing. And so a lot of the times what I'll have guys do is I'll say, let's narrow this down to 5 possible routes that we might want to go. All right. Guy will come back. Here's the 5 things. Great. Let's narrow it down to 3. Then he picks his top 3. He said, great. Now we need to pick one. And then I say, we need to pick one, and we have to let that rip for 6 months. And we have to literally see what we learn, what we experience, because along that route, when you have a route or a life direction, as I also say, this could be getting a simple job. Now, a job, and Tony Robbins said this, job doesn't just give you money. Job gives you purpose, gives you a reason to wake up in the morning, and it also gives you structure, right? Hey, I got to wake up at 8 a.m. and get to work by 8:30, right? So those 3 things are really important. I've had so many guys just get jobs and they're like, I feel great. And it's like, wow, that's all they needed was just a job, because now they're making some money, they have structure, and they have a purpose. All right. So for any guys who are listening to this, or parents, we just have to pick one thing and try it out for 6 months, because you're going to learn a lot throughout those 6 months. And you, as a man, as a young man, are going to become the asset. You're going to become the resources. You're going to acquire income generating skills, hopefully, that are going to help you in the future. All right. So just pick something, let it go for 6 months for the life direction. And when it comes to the discipline is very similar to the confidence. Discipline I define as doing the hard thing when the easy thing is readily available. And typically the hard thing we know is the long-term benefit, and the easy thing is the short-term benefit. So you can remember this super simple as short-term pain equals long-term gain, and vice versa. Short-term gain equals long-term pain. All right. So sorry, I don't know if I said short-term pain equals long-term gain. Short-term gain equals long-term pain, right? And this is why social media is so valuable, because it's a short-term gain yet equals a long-term pain, right? And that's why we know social media messes up so many young men, unfortunately. So how do we get disciplined? Discipline is something that these guys have to do, right? Like I tell the guys, like, I'm not going to lift the weight for you. I'm not going to eat the healthy meal for you. I'm not going to wake up at 5 a.m. for you. At some point, then this is where we kind of get back to, when do these guys have to take their lives more seriously? They have to make that decision. And that's like a very blunt conversation with these guys, where it's like, listen, I'm going to be okay no matter what you do, right? Like, everybody in this group is going to be okay no matter what you do, but it's you who has to make the decision. And that's where a lot of that internal self-discipline comes from. And I say discipline, confidence, all of this self-belief, it's built in the shadows. It's built when nobody's watching. So, and that's, I think, a really, really important point. So sorry for the long answer, but I tried to hit on all 3 of those. Hopefully that helped.
Not at all. Not at all. This was very important, and you explained it so well, DJ. And that is where I want to understand it a bit more. For the young generation, is that you talk about success. How do you tell them about success when they have not even seen enough failures to be resilient enough?
Mm-hmm.
How do you teach them about which direction to go? How do they choose that?
Yeah, I think the important piece here is, what do they think is successful? And I remember I was working with a young man once, and I asked him, like, what went well over the last 2 weeks? And he said, I showed up to work only late twice. And I was kind of sitting there, and I'm like, wow, that's what we thought was successful. I'm like, interesting. Right. So I think to the term of success, I have to first understand, what do you guys think is successful to you right now? Is it successful that you literally just got the job application out? Is it successful that you got 2 calls back? Right. And so I think when it comes to failure versus success, one of the lines we use a lot with the guys is, boys do what they want, men do what's required. And a lot of the requirements are going to involve us getting beat up a little bit. And so we often say, like, go earn your stripes, right? Go earn your scars. Scars are stories. Go get in the arena, right? Go get some blood on your face. Go get some dirt in the under the fingernails. Like, this is the point of life, right? Like, we're going to build our character by actually feeling the pain, feeling the discomfort, right? So that when you're 28 years old, like, you got a pretty good head on your shoulders and you're excited about what you see in the mirror and what you're waking up to that day. So I think when it comes to the failure and the success, I often will encourage the guys that failure is going to be a part of this whole program, right? No guy's going to hit 100%. We've had one guy hit 100% in a month, tracked all of his habits, was just an absolute machine. Yet the majority of guys miss stuff. I miss stuff, right? And it's about honesty. It's about integrity. And so we encourage the failure. We encourage the risk. We encourage the 10% outside the comfort zone. And then we also help the guys clearly define, what does it look like when you are successful with an exercise routine, with a morning routine, with a reading routine. So it's about the proper communication and expectations with each of the guys.
Absolutely, DJ. So is your work, is your job easy or very challenging?
Is it easy or very challenging? It's very honest. So I don't know if that answers the question, because some days the sessions, I mean, most of the time the sessions are awesome, right? Like, I love meeting with the guys. I don't really look at it as work. I look at it as an opportunity to be a part of a young man's development, which I think is one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been given. Because I know what it's like to have good men believe in me. And hopefully these young men can perceive me as a good man who believes in them as well. And I often reiterate that to them, like, listen, guys, I believe in you. I believe in each and every one of you. There's a reason you guys are in this group and you want to be that guy, right? It's because you want to get better. And that's really important to the success of this program. And so I continually reiterate that fact that I believe in them. So, would I say it's easy or hard? I don't think it's easy, because we're dealing with human beings. And I think anytime we're dealing with human beings and progress, it can be a little messy at times. Yet I look at it as I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of these guys' lives, because they don't have to let me into their life, right? Their moms, their families don't have to enroll them into this group. And so anytime they do, I'm very appreciative. And it's something that I'm actually trying to do a better job of, is just show my genuine appreciation for the guys and the families who trust us and trust be that guy to help get their son pointed in the right direction. So I would say it's really fulfilling and and I'm very grateful to do this work.
Absolutely. You talked about the hard things, a bit of the hard things that you need, but you also talk about that you teach these guys how to master not only the hard things, but also the soft skills of life. What are these soft skills that you talk about?
So the first, kind of to put it simply, the soft skills are more around judgment and more around empathy, curiosity, and listening. And so basically the way that we run our program is, it's a 13-week program. So we have basically 12 weeks of habit building and soft skill development with a week 0 kind of kickoff. And so around week 5, we shift into not only hard skill development with our habit tracking, but then we also have some soft skill discussions within the group. And these soft skills are around, where am I judging myself in my life? Where am I judging others? Where am I judging circumstances? How do I adopt more of a neutral thinking mindset versus a high emotional response mindset? And a lot of what we help guys see is, events within our lives are merely just neutral until we apply a meaning to it. And a great example, you can think about a moment of your life that you experienced that you initially thought was really bad, really negative. And then a year went by, and looking back on it, you're like, holy cow, that was one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me, right? In the moment we thought it was bad, yet looking back on it, it's actually really good. Great example was when I shared I got fired from my job. I thought that was horrible. I thought it was brutal, but it's actually one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me, right? So that's a lot of what we work on the guys with, is helping them understand that their perspective is ultimately what they're going to feel. And I heard a guy named Peter Crone say this: we're not a victim of our circumstances. We're a victim of our perspective. So it's essentially how we choose to look at anything is essentially how we're going to feel and how we're going to operate. And so we work on we work on judgment, we work on the changing of the perspective and the neutral events. And then we also work on empathy and listening. Empathy is essentially how can we channel our inner childhood essence and remember that every human being on the face of this earth started as a baby, as a little human that grew up in a family with traditions and values and cultures, and how can we respect and understand their points of view and empathize with them. And when we start to do that more with others, we naturally start to do it more with ourselves. And so when we start to empathize more with ourselves, we start to, I think, be a little bit more curious with our own stress. And I'm not saying to never get a little angry or have some negative self-talk. I actually value the power of negative self-talk as a trigger and kind of as a catalyst to get yourself into a better action. Yet I don't think it should be a state of being, right? And so empathy is one of the pieces that we also talk about. And then listening, especially from guys. Guys have egos, right? We want to solve problems. It's the way that we were kind of wired. And sometimes people just need to be listened to. And we just need to listen to them like with our heart and truly be present for them. Sometimes our presence is more than just the answers we decide to give. And so we teach guys about how can we listen better, right? And then the last thing we do is called the 10% thinking. 10% thinking is essentially any event has 10% of it that could help us, kind of similar to the finding the gift or the opportunity within a neutral event. So a lot of it is essentially around the positive and negative sides of our thinking and what's between the ears, and how can we live life with less stress and less judgment and more joy and more peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do any of these guys come back later on, and talk to you what's going on in their lives?
Oh yeah, the majority of the guys. So typically the way that we do, and we've kind of been testing different routes for each guy, you could say. Yet a lot of the guys will go through our 13-week program. Sometimes they'll actually just join the next group because they want to just stay within the habit tracking. Some guys will actually just join our club community to start, which is just like bi-weekly calls, and you just join the whole Be That Guy community, get to hang out with all the guys. And then they actually might jump into the habit program because we start a new one each month, like a small group of guys. And we have guys who I've been working with for 5 years who are still in technically I was working with them one-on-one, and then we enrolled them into Be That Guy. So we have guys who I've known since I was, 25 years old, and now I'm 30, right? And these guys were 20 when I was started working with them, and now they're 25, right? So once they kind of come in, I like to think that we create a really cool environment and a warm, welcoming, loving environment where hopefully tough, good, kind, empathetic, driven, disciplined men are there to meet them and are there to listen to them. And that's really important to me.
Absolutely. You also got this acres of diamonds and all these programs, these two programs, are they only, in person, or anyone can also access this online?
Yep. So Acres of Diamonds is the parent company who essentially kind of created Acres Diamonds is the parent company that Scott and I founded together, my mentor. We founded Acres Diamonds in around 2020. And Be That Guy is essentially our mental fitness program or our coaching program offered from Acres of Diamonds. We call Be That Guy. And so Acres of Diamonds is we work with companies and we partner with them and we work them through an 8-week emotional intelligence and mental fitness course that essentially helps develop self-leadership a little bit better. And this is all we've done, both virtual and we've done in-person trainings, yet we do all of that with kind of like corporate partnerships, right? So it essentially kind of, yes, it is all online virtually. It allows us to just kind of connect with more people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, DJ. There's so much to learn about all this. And I'm sure a lot of young people, a lot of parents would want to learn more about your programs, about what you do, how best they can, be that guy, and take the help from a guy like you. What's the best way for them to do so?
So the best way, if you're on social media, Instagram is typically the platform that I'm most active on. So you can go to @DJ Logory, Logory. I post just about every single day. Different. Sometimes we have funny posts. Sometimes we have more serious posts. And then if you want to check out our website, you can go to BeThatGuyClub.com. As I mentioned earlier, we kind of call it like a big club. So it's BeThatGuyClub.com, and we have pages for both guys and parents, so they can check it out there. And if parents want to actually schedule a time to chat with me, kind of walk me through kind kind of what's going on with their son and what they want to see, there's opportunities just to book a quick chat with me on that. And YouTube is the other thing that we're starting to kind of grow a little bit on as well. So our YouTube channel is Be That Guy with 2 Y's. So you can just kind of type in DJ Logory, Be That Guy, and it should come up. And we post just about every other day on there, different podcast clips, YouTube shorts, different episodes, content all over the place. And we also do a lot of stuff that's specifically driven not only for guys, but we also do a lot of content now for moms. Because what I'm realizing is typically all of the guys start with a mom who cared first, right? So that's like really important. So we do a lot of content now for moms as well.
Wonderful. With this, it's set up on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ajay.